Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. And if this is your first time here, welcome to my channel. For this tutorial, I am going to show you how I made this ruched fabric inspired cake that I have done before with similar things before using different mediums. This time I'm using rice paper. So I've been wanting to try this, so I thought, let's just go ahead and do it for a fall kind of moody cake and add some metallic in there. And that metallic is bronze is what I used, or copper. Bronze or copper. Anyway, I will add some links to where you can get those. And first thing we need to do is go ahead and I use warm water, put it in some kind of a bowl that's big enough, or plate. This plate has edges to it, big enough to put a piece of rice paper in it. And I just added a little bit of gold food coloring. Originally, I was going to do this gold, but then I kind of decided I wanted to do a different metallic this time, which you'll see that it doesn't really matter, just as long as you have a base tone to your rice paper. And you're just going to leave it in there long enough to soften it to where the pattern that is on the paper kind of just goes away, but still not so soft that it just kind of mushes together. So I would guesstimate about 30 seconds to a minute is really all that takes. And I just kind of twisted it around itself. I do a lot of draping with the ruching, and this time I wanted to do a slightly different pattern. So we're just doing some kind of spirals. And I used, what did I use? Maybe 4 or 5 pieces of rice paper. You can use however many you want. You can do this design however you want. You don't even have to do it exactly this way. And you will find that the rice paper, when it is wet like this, it will stick to itself. And I'm just arranging these on a silicone mat so that when it dries, it will release from the mat with no problem. Now I wanted this design to kind of be at an angle up the side because I'm going to use those crushed Isomalt pieces. And those are going to be the two main elements on this cake besides the texture that I'll show you how I do on the fondant. And I just used a pitcher. You could use some cake dummies to drape that over so that it dries in the shape of the cake. And this is a 6-inch cake, so I kind of guesstimated approximately how big that would need to be. Now I just set that aside and I left it honestly overnight. You could try to bake it, but do you know what happens when you bake them? Sometimes as they cool, they kind of, well, as they cook and as they cool, they kind of lose their shape. As they cook, the heat makes it pull away a little bit. And as it cools, they can crack a little too. So if you have time to do it overnight, go ahead and do that. And I'm just using my crusting American buttercream on the cake. It was already crumb-coated, filled and crumb-coated, and this is my final layer because we're going to do some fondant on top. So it doesn't matter what color you use buttercream-wise underneath the fondant. And this is just black fondant. And I'm just rolling it out to about, you want to leave it a little thicker when you're doing a silicone matte impression on it, maybe a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch thick. Because as you roll it out, it thins it out a little bit. And I added a little cornstarch on the fondant to keep it from sticking. Now, right now, it's kind of hard to see the pattern because of all that cornstarch. But when you remove that cornstarch, and I will show you how I prefer to do that, your pattern will come through. And I had measured the height and the circumference of the cake, and that showed me how big of a piece I needed to cut out. And I set it to the side to firm up a little bit before I try to transfer it onto the cake. And I have a little circular piece for the top as well. And I like to put that on first. And I attach my fondant with some shortening. You can use water. That works fine too. Or even a simple syrup. But I like shortening because you can move it. You're not committed as much as you are with water or a simple syrup. I just like to have the option to move it if I need to. And I turned it upside down so when I cut off that excess fondant, I have a nice crisp corners. And again, there's still some shortening. I didn't show you how I put it on. You can brush it on. I sometimes just put it on with some clean, dry hands. Just put it in your palms and just kind of rub it on your buttercream. This buttercream obviously needs to be set up and chilled in the refrigerator or in the freezer. If you're doing the freezer, I would do 10 minutes. In the refrigerator, 20. I wouldn't leave it more than 10 minutes in the freezer or you're going to be dealing with a little bit too much condensation. And then I just gently lifted it up. You can roll it around a rolling pin or some kind of a dowel if you like to do it that way, but I like to let it firm up a little bit and then just gently wrap it around. If you wrap it around something smaller, you might end up with some elephant skin and a little bit of tearing. So that's just a personal preference. And then I'm just made sure that it was all the way down to the bottom of the board. And I'm removing the excess off of the top with a sharp X-Acto knife. You can use just any kind of a thinner, sharp knife. And if your fondant is a little soft, you can set it in the fridge for about 10 minutes before you do that. And now I'm making the crushed Isomalt pieces. I'm just using Loran's. I think that's how you say it. I also, it's not the only brand that I like, but I tend to, at this point, get this kind. Because it's on my list on Amazon and I can quickly just order it. And I just followed the directions on the back of the package. You just mix your water. I like to use a distilled water, especially when I'm at the bakery working or in my studio, because the water in that town is kind of tints the Isomalt yellow. And I don't like that. So I just use the distilled water. If you ever have that problem, just do that and see if that helps. And then once it's reached its temperature, I just added some black food coloring. I really like the elegance of the black with the metallic on this cake. I just wish in the pictures and in the video you could see this detail a little bit more. I could see it more in person than you could in the pictures. But, you know, you do the best you can. And I'm just using this little silicone mold that I used on a cake recently. I wanted it to be thicker and chunkier. So I didn't want to just pour it out on a silicone mat because it would thin out too much as it kind of leveled out. So I felt like if I put it in this mold, it can only go so far, so it's going to stay thicker. And then I just let that cool, which doesn't take that long. And when it comes to adding the luster dust, I find that when it is still tacky is really honestly the best time to do it because it's going to accept that metallic and be nice and shiny for you. So I would do that probably about half an hour after you have already made your shape with your rice paper. Now we're going to remove the cornstarch from the cake with just a clothing steamer. This technique for me works the best. You can brush it off with water or use some shortening if you want to, but I kind of just prefer to use the steamer. It's so much easier and it's really a minimal investment. And then I'm attaching our decoration with just a little buttercream. And I'm using some toothpicks to hold it in place while it sets up. You'll want to put it in the refrigerator for a good hour or so that it stays where you put it before you remove those toothpicks. And then when you do remove those toothpicks, just kind of twist them out. An hour minimum. It might take longer than that. You'll know when it's done. Then we're going to remove our Isomalt from our mold, and I'm just kind of breaking it up into smaller pieces. Now, don't mind my towel. It is not dirty. I need to bleach my towels. I said that, I think my last video or the one before, that my towels just need to be bleached. My husband does the laundry on the weekends. He washes things, and I put things away, but I can't seem to get him to think to put bleach in. Why would he? I just need to do it myself. So then I just use a mallet to break it into smaller pieces. I wanted some larger pieces and some smaller pieces, and I kind of just separated them on 2 different silicone mats. That mallet works really, isn't it? No, it's a meat cleaver is what that's called, right? A mallet and a meat cleaver works really well for breaking these up. And the reason I put it in a towel to begin with is because I didn't want, well, the towel and the silicone mat, because I didn't want it to mar up my countertop. That Isomalt can be very sharp. And here I'm just using the same, I don't know, what would you call it, copper or bronze? I'm going to have to look at my little container at work, at the studio, to get the exact color, but I'm just using it with a little bit of Everclear, and I am just putting it on. All this is floral wire. I just wanted to get one more added decorative element, and I thought this would be a good way to do that. I just wanted to get them coated the same color as the ruching on the front, and just set them aside once I get them painted and let them dry. Now we're just attaching our Isomalt. I'm just use a little buttercream behind there. You can't see that. Well, maybe you can see it a little bit. It's just little buttercream is all I use to get it to attach. There it is. There's the black buttercream. I did black for the buttercream because I didn't want it to stand out. If you did white, you're going to see it. And I'm just kind of eyeballing how I want these arranged. And you can use the Isomalt pieces to cover up any holes that you might have, because you'll notice as sometimes when the rice paper dries, it will pull apart from itself just a little bit. Not as bad as if you had put it in the oven, but it might separate a little bit and you might have some gaps. And if that doesn't bother you, that doesn't bother you. That's great. I just wanted to use up some of this Isomalt at the same time. So I just went ahead and stuck them in anywhere I had some gaps. And along the bottom, I put some smaller pieces. On the board, you would just put some piping gel. Now here is, poof, it's done. Every single time I have some missing footage, I just added some black leaves, and the floral wire I just twisted and inserted into the cake. You can put straws in the cake if you don't want those wires to actually touch the cake. Since this is not for an order, I didn't bother, but you can. Just little like coffee stirring sticks would be great for that. And there it is, all done. I think it's really pretty. I love black. I think black with metallic is such a pretty combination, or black with white. I don't know if you've noticed. A lot of my videos have those. So this is the finished product. I hope you liked it. I hope you got something from it. And we will catch you on the next one.